Tom Riddle. Lord Voldemort begins his life not as a Dark Lord, but as Tom Marvolo Riddle, born in a Muggle orphanage after his mother, Merope Gaunt, died giving birth to him, having already been abandoned by his father, a wealthy Muggle named Tom Riddle Sr., who left once the love potion Merope had been using on him wore off. Merope came from the Gaunts, a once proud pureblood family fallen into poverty, an inbred obsession with their descent from Salazar Slytherin, and she named her son after both the father who rejected him and the grandfather, Marvolo, whose legacy she still clung to even while dying alone. Raised at Wool's orphanage with no knowledge of magic, young Tom is identified as unusual rather than gifted, a child other children fear because strange things happen around him, from a rabbit found hanged to a boy pushed off a cliff edge. Incidents Dumbledore later confirms were deliberate cruelty rather than accidental bursts of magic. When Dumbledore arrives to deliver his Hogwarts letter in person, Riddle's first reaction is not wonder, but calculation, hoarding stolen trinkets from other children as trophies and demanding confirmation that his abilities make him special. Compared to Harry, who arrives at Hogwarts starved for belonging but still capable of forming real attachments, Riddle arrives already convinced that ordinary connection is beneath him, treating the discovery of magic less as a home finally offered and more as proof he was always meant to rule, rather than belong. Hogwarts years. At Hogwarts, Riddle proves himself the most naturally gifted student in a generation, charming professors, particularly Horace Slughorn, into treating him as a favorite, while quietly researching dark magic far beyond his year, using resources most students never touch. Digging into his mother's family history, he tracks down his squib uncle Morphin Gaunt and learns of his connection to Salazar Slytherin, a discovery that becomes the foundation of his belief that he is entitled to the school's darkest legacy. In his 5th year, Riddle opens the Chamber of Secrets and unleashes the basilisk hidden within it, killing a student named Myrtle, then frames the spider Aragog and, by extension, Rubeus Hagrid for the attack, closing the chamber without suspicion while an innocent classmate is expelled in his place. Compared to the loyalty Harry inspires in friends who know exactly who he is, Riddle cultivates admiration built entirely on performance, and he graduates as head boy with top marks, outwardly the model student the school could ask for. That gap between reputation and reality becomes the template for everything that follows. Voldemort's power was never a secret waiting to be revealed so much as a persona built from his very first year, specifically so that no one would look closely enough to stop him. Death Eaters. After graduating, Riddle takes a job at Borgin and Burke's, a shop dealing in cursed artifacts, using the position to track down objects connected to the Hogwarts founders while quietly returning to murder his own father and grandparents, a killing he frames his Uncle Morphin for using a false memory and a stolen wand. Compared to the Death Eaters who later idolize him for restoring pureblood supremacy, Riddle's own bloodline is only half magical, a fact he spends the rest of his life concealing behind the invented name Lord Voldemort, an anagram of his birth name meant to erase Tom Riddle entirely. Traveling abroad for years afterward, he studies forbidden magic across Europe before returning to Britain to build a following, drawing in wizards who share his belief that Muggleborns have stolen a birthright belonging to pureblood families. By the 1970s, that following has become a paramilitary force willing to torture and kill in his name, and the First Wizarding War leaves the magical world living in open terror, with even the Ministry unable to guarantee anyone's safety. Compared to ordinary tyrants motivated by wealth or territory, Voldemort's cruelty during this period is always in service of something larger and more personal, proving over and over that the boy from the orphanage no one wanted has become the most feared wizard alive. The Horcruxes. Voldemort's defining obsession, the fear of death, takes concrete shape while he is still a student, when he corners Professor Slughorn and asks pointed questions about Horcruxes, objects capable of anchoring a fragment of a deliberately split soul to the world so that even a destroyed body cannot end the caster's life. Over the following decades, he creates 6 of them, using murder each time to tear his soul, beginning with the diary that later possesses Ginny Weasley and continuing through Marvolo Gaunt's ring and the locket and cup stolen from the dying collector Hepzibah Smith, whom he poisons for them. He later adds Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, tracked down after tricking her ghost into revealing its hiding place, and finally his snake, Nagini, kept unusually close because his weakened post-resurrection body comes to depend on her for protection and, unknowingly, for immortality. Compared to every other dark wizard in the series, this obsession cost Voldemort something none of his followers fully register: since splitting the soul repeatedly leaves him progressively less human in appearance, his face eventually losing all resemblance to Tom Riddle. What none of them know, including Voldemort himself, is that a seventh fragment was created entirely by accident, torn loose and driven into the nearest living thing in the room the night his killing curse was turned back against him. First downfall. Voldemort's first true defeat comes from a prophecy he only half hears, reported to him by Severus Snape, describing a child born at the end of July with the power to defeat him, a description that could apply equally to Harry Potter or Neville Longbottom. Choosing Harry, Voldemort travels to Godric's Hollow on Halloween night in 1981 and kills James Potter before confronting Lily, who refuses to step aside and dies protecting her son, activating ancient protective magic neither Voldemort nor anyone else fully understands at the time. The killing curse. He then aims at infant Harry rebounds instead, destroying his body and reducing him to something barely alive, a soul too damaged even to properly haunt the world it once terrorized. Compared to the absolute power he commanded only hours earlier, Voldemort spends the following decade as what one of his own followers later describes as less than the meanest ghost, drifting through the forests of Albania and possessing animals just to survive, unable to hold a human body of his own. That collapse, as sudden as it is total, becomes the story's first proof that raw magical power was never the thing actually protecting him, and that a single act of love he considered irrelevant was strong enough to undo everything he had built. Return to power. Voldemort's slow climb back toward a body begins in 1991 when he convinces Professor Quirrell to let him share his body, hidden beneath a turban, in an attempt to steal the Sorcerer's Stone from Hogwarts and use its elixir to restore himself fully. Harry defeats him again that year, and Voldemort's spirit is forced to flee once more, until his servant Peter Pettigrew, hiding for over a decade disguised as a rat, helps him regain a weak, larval body sustained on unicorn blood. Compared to the humiliation of that half-existence, the ritual performed in a graveyard during the Triwizard Tournament in Goblet of Fire finally restores him completely, using bone from his father's grave, flesh willingly cut from Pettigrew's own arm, and blood forcibly taken from Harry, a choice that unknowingly binds Lily's old protective magic to Voldemort's own body as well. Standing fully restored for the first time in over a decade, Voldemort immediately murders Cedric Diggory, a witness who happened to be in the wrong place, establishing before he has even finished speaking that mercy plays no larger role in this version of him than it did in the last. Compared to the secrecy of his years as a disembodied spirit, this return marks Voldemort's shift back into open warfare, setting the stage for a second war the wizarding world spends its next few years first denying and then desperately trying to survive. Second War. Once his return becomes undeniable, Voldemort focuses on two goals at once: killing Harry Potter and seizing control of the wizarding government, a strategy that culminates in the Ministry's collapse in 1997 when Death Eaters install a puppet minister and begin persecuting Muggle-born witches and wizards. Compared to the chaotic terror of the First War, this second campaign is organized and bureaucratic, using forged laws and stage trials to make persecution look procedural rather than criminal, a change that makes the war harder for ordinary wizards to resist openly. Voldemort personally oversees the murder of Severus Snape, believing that killing the Elder Wand's presumed master will finally make the Wand's power his own, unaware that Wand allegiance had already passed to Draco Malfoy after Draco disarmed Dumbledore, and then to Harry after Harry disarmed Draco in turn. As his forces tighten control over Hogwarts itself, installing the Carrows to terrorize students and turning the school into an extension of his regime, Voldemort grows increasingly convinced that total victory is only one battle away. Compared to the calculating student who once built an entire persona around being underestimated, this Voldemort has stopped concealing his cruelty altogether, mistaking fear for loyalty and control for security in ways that leave him blind to how fragile his position actually is. Final death. The Battle of Hogwarts brings every unresolved thread of Voldemort's story to a single point, as Harry's willing walk into the Forbidden Forest destroys the Horcrux inside him, and Neville Longbottom beheads Nagini in the middle of the fighting, stripping away the last hidden anchor keeping Voldemort tethered to life, believing himself finally invincible, master of the Elder Wand and rid of the one person prophesied to stop him. Voldemort confronts Harry directly, only to be told the truth he has spent decades refusing to understand. Wand allegiance follows conquest of will rather than murder, and because Harry, not Voldemort, had truly disarmed the Wand's line of previous masters, the Elder Wand was never his to command. When the two duel a final time, Voldemort's own killing curse rebounds against him exactly as it did in Godric's Hollow, this time with no infant's protection to explain away. Only the plain mechanics of a wand refusing to strike down the one wizard it recognizes as its master. Compared to every enemy he destroyed across 2 wars through sheer terror, Voldemort dies undone by the very thing he never allowed himself to value: connection, loyalty freely given rather than extracted through fear. The kind of bond Harry inspired in friends willing to die for him, and that Voldemort, even at the height of his power, was never able to command from anyone at all.